Hello, everyone. I want to start by thanking our guests who have agreed to serve on this panel today for what I know is going to be a really enjoyable and educational experience for all of those that will be listening and watching this recorded presentation. My name is Paul Kraft, and I have the honor of hosting this event, and we'll be asking our panel the questions. I serve the University of Alaska Southeast as the Sitka Campus Director, and all of our panelists are currently living in Sitka, Alaska. I want to start our time by acknowledging that the land where this campus of the University of Alaska Southeast is located and where we live and work is on Tlingit Ani. Ani is the Tlingit word for land, and the Tlingit people have been amazing stewards of this incredible land for more than 10,000 years, and we now share a responsibility for joining them in taking care of this land. So for taking such wonderful care of this amazing place since time immemorial, we say thank you and Gunas Chish. The practice of giving land acknowledgements at public events or meetings is becoming increasingly common across the country. Land acknowledgements are statements that are generally made as the meeting begins or as a speaker begins making their comments. And they usually include acknowledging that the land which they are gathered upon belongs to a group of people that predated our time. And there's typically a statement of gratitude made for the excellent care that's been given to this land by these people. Prior to my arrival in Alaska 18 months ago, I had never heard the term land acknowledgement. I hadn't heard of it. I've not seen it. I've not witnessed it. But very quickly upon taking the job here at the university, I began to participate in meetings where land acknowledgements were given. And I had a lot of questions about it. And like I said, it was not part of my experience as an higher educational administrator. But hearing them several times, I did a little research, so I learned some things about it, but it also just personally caused me to reflect about being on the land and being a late arrival to the land, not just 18 months in Alaska, but 130 years ago, none of my descendants lived in the United States. They all came from Europe. So it made me think about what being a guest on Indigenous land meant to me. And as I talked to people, I found that a lot of others had questions about it as well. So I worked with some good people to put this panel discussion together. And again, I want to thank those that have agreed to help teach me some things about this idea of land acknowledgements. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion that's about to occur. We're going to meet our panelists in a minute, but first I want to acknowledge that I have two colleagues at UAS that are working behind the scenes to make this panel discussion happen. First, John Ingman is our instructional designer at UAS Sitka, and he will be doing the editing of this panel discussion. And Courtney MacArthur is an employee here at the university. Her title is support specialist. And Courtney played a big role in bringing the people together and making this event happen. So I want to say thank you to both John and Courtney. Now I want to introduce or have our panel members introduce themselves, and then we will begin asking and answering the questions.
Sinudang hidang dilagang hawa kisgansi hinodikyaan. In the Haida language, my name Kisgansi means place of one's own. And I'm in a clan with the eagle, moiety, with beaver, frog, and sculpin crests. And the sculpin is a fish. And I was born in Ketchikan, and both of my parents were born there. But my dad is from Kasan, which is a village on Prince of Wales Island. It's the northernmost of the Haida villages, and one of two now in Alaska, the other being Heidelberg. And so growing up, we always knew that our family was from Kasan, and we heard a lot of things like when the tide is out, the table is set and things like that. So we've always had a connection to the land. And I'm now on the Sitka Tribe of Alaska Tribal Council. I'm on the Kayani Commission and some other boards in town, like the Friends of Sheldon Jackson Museum, Braveheart Volunteers. And so I've attended a lot of meetings where there's land acknowledgements. And I'm the host and creator, producer of a weekly radio show, Gunaastaa, which celebrates Alaska Native languages. And I've always felt it was very important for the land to hear its languages. And so all of those are the reasons why I was very interested in being involved with this panel. And it's an honor, and I'm happy to be here. Hawa, thank you. Gunaastaa.
I could go ahead and go next. Ayetli yuchatuasak, chak nakatsati, take wedia yachat, shana hitaweha nakahidi, sheet kachichat nawat, kiksadi yadi chatsati, tlinedi dashkanayachat, wushkitan dashkanayachat. So let me go ahead and provide a loose translation of what I just said in Tlingit. My name is Crystal Duncan, or Ayetli, if that's easier for you to pronounce. My parents are Al and Pauline Duncan. I'm Tlingit and come from basically a matrilineal society, which is to say that I follow my mother's lineage. So like her, I'm Eagle Brown Bear from the Valley House, which originates in Angoon. To honor her father or my maternal grandfather, I acknowledge that I'm a grandchild of the Raven Dog Salmon people of Angoon. And then to honor my father, I recognize that I'm a child of the Raven Frog from the Clay House, which originates here in Sitka. So I then round out my introduction by honoring his father or my paternal grandfather by acknowledging that I'm a grandchild of the Eagle Shark people of Huna. So I want to first show appreciation and give thanks for inviting me to participate in this space today. Before we actually get started on the questions, I want to acknowledge that I don't consider myself an elder or really even to be a cultural bearer. So I don't speak on behalf of others, rather I show up in an appreciation of how cultural sharing can build bridges. So my education into what it is to be Tlingit, it really began when I was born into my family. I was raised by my immediate family here in Sitka, and of course, greatly influenced by my large extended family throughout Southeast Alaska. So I'm so happy to share that in hopes that it brings a perspective that may be new to some of those who are tuning in and kind of watching and streaming to learn more about land acknowledgements. I'm just a strong believer in cultural sharing, so Gunaastaa for inviting me.
I'll go next. Good afternoon. My Tlingit name is Shaá Gunaastaa, so I'll introduce myself in my language. Shaá Gunaastaa yuchatuasak, tlinedi ayachat, kagwantan yadi. Doch Louidi Dutch Gunk Tlingit Ani Ayachat Hawk Kwan Ayachat. My Tlingit name is Shaá Gunaastaa, and it roughly translates to the mountain goat with the human face, or even the man who taught human beings how to respect the dead. I'm a cemetery caretaker, and I restore cemeteries here in Sitka and kind of monitor some other sites. I serve on the Tribal Council for Sitka Tribe of Alaska. I am a child of what they call the Kagwantan, like a child of a bear or a child of a wolf. And I'm Raven, Tlin dog salmon from Juneau, Kaja Hit. And I actually serve on a number of working groups and committees. In Juneau, I serve on the Land Acknowledgement Committee, and we are currently working with land acknowledgement with UAS as well, and the school district. We're renaming Riverbend School and a number of other things. So I have experience in this. And also, I'm a grandchild of the Ducklo killer whale out of Angoon. So I have a lot of family and cultural ties, both here in Sitka and also in Angoon and Juneau. So when I was asked to be part of this group, I thought about it, and I really hold high the people whose land Sitka were in, Sitka Kwan. So I really uphold the Kiksadi and really treasure their connection to this land. And I'm a guest, but I'm a child of Sitka. And I'm very fortunate that the people of Sitka include my family and my clan. And so we're participating here as Twin AD. Happy about that. And I have a lot to share. And this is introductions. And I look forward to the positive outcomes of cultural pride. So thank you for allowing me here, Kanashtish.
Ashlynn Emanoff, Yuchat Duasak, Kagwantan Ayachat, Chak Khatsati. Hello, my name is Ashlynn Emanoff, and I am Kagwantan from the Eagle moiety, and my crest is the killer whale, and I come from the Chak Kudi Hit, which is the eagle nest house. I am also Aleut from my great-great-grandfather, and I have lived in Sitka for most of my life, and I have family in Cake as well. I was asked to be a part of this panel by my teacher of the Bajahin dancers, to be the youth voice of what land acknowledgements are and what they mean. And I am excited to share what I think of what they are to me. Gunaastaa for inviting me.
All right, thank you all. Thank you all for being a part of this, and I'm looking forward to continuing to learn from you. I'm going to start with our first question. As I mentioned in my introductory comments, prior to me moving to Sitka, I had not heard of land acknowledgements. It was new to me. And as I've learned more, I've discovered that the land acknowledgement has its roots, or is rooted in Indigenous culture. And it's not something that was brought by the white to Indigenous. It actually is risen from Indigenous culture. And so I'd like anybody to talk about that, just the idea of land acknowledgement and how it's rooted in Indigenous culture.
Yeah, that's a pretty heavy question, and that land acknowledgement, it goes back a long ways. And like, for instance, here in Sitka, we call Sitka Shitka Kwan. It's the people of this place, is what it roughly translates to. And I mentioned earlier that my family's a guest here. So I'm going to share from that perspective. I was very fortunate to have been raised by my father's people, the Kagwantan, here in Sitka. And that land acknowledgement in the people of this place. When a guest comes to Sitka, quite often, like if we come by canoe, we announce ourselves to the village that we're coming ashore, and that we show our hands that we come in a good way, and that we're no threat. And we announce ourselves. And our hosts, they dress themselves up and they sing the welcome songs. And they welcome the people ashore. And when they dress themselves up, it's not to make themselves look good. It's to show the hosts, the guests, how much they think of them. And they even lift up the canoes. They lift up the people because they love them so much. They're treasures. And they even carry the people onto the shore and into the homes, even the whole canoe. That's how much they think of them. And it's such a warm feeling, always, good energy, always. And speaking kindly to each other, always. It's how much we think of each other. So land acknowledgement is for the guests. Often you ask permission to use the land, and often you're even married into the local community and establish your family there. It's all ceremony. It's all done by what we call our opposite clan, who witness all of these things. And we do it transparently. And it's very important to work with the people whose land we are on. Very, very important. And also, it's a deeply spiritual thing as well, to create a connection. Why we are there, a connection. And often it is for trade and for the clans to thrive. So there's more I could share, but I'll pass it on.
Thanks, Bob. Crystal, you have some thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, I can add to what he largely spoke about, but I think I'm going to take it a couple steps back to you, Paul, and how you acknowledged that when you came here, you had to learn about this new term that you were hearing. So you probably Googled it, right? And so as I was preparing, I did the same thing because I wanted to see how do they define what a land acknowledgement looks like. So just to kind of get us on the same page, Cambridge Dictionary, their definition. In some countries, for example, Canada or the United States, a formal statement that recognizes and respects the Indigenous peoples of an area, often given at the beginning of a sporting event, school day, or public meeting, to say that it is taking place on land that formerly belonged to those Indigenous people. Which is kind of, we can sum it up like that, but I think for us, that kind of notes that it is outsiders who are now recognizing and showing respect and gratitude for the original inhabitants, yes. But for me, I've always known land acknowledgements happened within my community. So like Bob had mentioned, across clans. So opposite clans, you show respect to them within a land acknowledgement. So it's a form of respect. How did I learn about it? By doing it. And I'll give you the most relevant example to me. I mentioned that I have family around Southeast Alaska. We will jump on the boat. We'll go over to Angoon to visit with my extended family. Most of them are still over in Angoon. When we do that, we are going to pull up to my Uncle Sonny's, and I mentioned that he recently passed this year, but we would always pull up to my Uncle Sonny's dock up the bay. And we had to do a couple of things. So US Coast Guard says, get a safety plan in place, let people know that you're coming. Yeah, we do it for safety, but we also do it as a form of acknowledgement that we're heading your direction. You can see us, you'll expect to see us in about 2.5 or 3 hours. So whenever we pull up to that dock, we're always met with family who show up, pick up our items, they receive us for the weekend. We know that the food will be taken care of. We know that they will show up in droves to share the meals at dinner. We have a place to sleep. Basically, all of our needs will be met. So when I talk about a form of respect, it goes so deep within the fact that I come from this community. I know that I'll be taken care of, and we show respect to them because we know we are guests on their land. It always comes back to that. So even my cousins, I know that I'm a guest in their house. I know I'm a guest in their community. I know that I'm going to be taken care of. And so for me, it's to reciprocate that gratitude as I'm there. So Bob talked about awaiting an invitation when you were traditionally in a canoe. And if you want to actually see that in action, it does happen. So they kind of recreated each celebration, which takes place every 2 years in Juneau. People from different communities throughout Southeast, they will basically get in a canoe and they will go from community to community until they finally arrive in Juneau, and they make this big ceremony out of it. But it's basically doing what he had mentioned. So pulling up, awaiting an invitation, and then exchanging gifts of thanks or actual gifts to say thank you for receiving us for the evening. So I think that's a neat way to see that happen. It hasn't always happened. Celebration's been going on for decades now, but it's definitely something that now that they have those canoes going over every 2 years, if you actually wanted to see that ceremony take place, it's still happening. For me, land acknowledgements, like I had described, they mostly occur informally. It was built into basically how I was raised. And so I've never formally called it a land acknowledgement. But I will say there are other ways. So, and Bob has hit on it when he did his introduction as well. So oftentimes another form of acknowledgement related to land acknowledgement, I will say Kiksadiya di Khatsiti. So that tells you that I am a child of a Kiksadi. I mentioned that that's my father and that's his people and that his roots are here in Sitka. So that's my way of kind of expressing my gratitude to those people who were the first stewards. So I appreciate that this question kind of came to the point that this isn't a new concept, that this has been happening for hundreds of years. The new part is that it's becoming more commonplace at these, when I worked in education over at UAS, we would call them predominantly white institutions. And so I think it's really a good first step, and I appreciate the gesture of it. But I like that you allowed us an opportunity to state that we learned about land acknowledgements through doing, and that it's been happening in our community as a form of respect for hundreds of years. So that's kind of my contribution. Gunaastaa.
Thank you, Crystal. Fred or Ashlynn, anything you want to add to that, or before we move to the second question?
Yeah, so with what Crystal and Bob were saying, mine I feel is very similar, because I'm a student of the Sitka Native Education Program, which teaches every kid in school from like kindergarten all the way to graduation of what our culture is and our songs and our dances, as well as our language. And when we do our song, we have these canoe songs, which are like our coming in and our walking songs and like our exiting. And we're always told like, we sing these songs so the people of this land know we are coming. And it feels more than just like acknowledging that there are these of who live on the land, but it's also the stewardship and the care and the balance that the clan would have and the Indigenous people have taken to make it so we can still be on the land and use it and like enjoy what we have and like the beauty that we can see.
Thank you, Ashlynn.
It's really important that it's, as it's been said, that the land acknowledgement is rooted in respect. It's not just something, it's really rooted and grounded in traditional ways of life, customary practices. And so it's important for people to realize that, even though now we don't always travel to communities by canoes, or, we take a jet to Seattle, we don't take 2 weeks to go by canoe, but we still have that same respect for the land and the people of the land. And I like where you were going with that, Ashlynn, is, the permission to be on the land, but permission to be a steward of the land also, not, to permission to be honorable.
All right, thank you.